Good morning, and welcome to our Thursday, October 12th, 2024. It's a bi-monthly morning session. So this is just a session where we hear updates, and we have 5 of those today. We'll hear an update from the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools. We'll hear one from Partners Health Management, Planning and Development Services, the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Utilities update, and we have a property disposition update. That's a more internal staff part. And we're going to begin today with the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools and our superintendent, Tricia McManus. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning,
everyone. All right, let me pull this up. Are they in order? I'm trying to, okay. Pull it. Oh, wait, I just saw it. Right here. Right here? Okay, to share it. Oh, okay, here, I'll let you do it. Where is it? Very good, very fast. All right, good morning. Thank you all so much for having me this morning. This will be a pretty brief update, but of course I'll answer any questions that you might have. We have been back in school for 5 weeks now, and it started out smoothly and, not without some incidents as time goes on, but definitely a smooth start in all areas of facility readiness and transportation. So it's been a really good 4 weeks. We're in our 5th week as we speak. So just so you know a little bit about our numbers, I'm giving you some information that might be of interest to you today. These are our current numbers, and you can see without pre-kindergarten and with pre-kindergarten. When you look at state allotments, and we're about 700 students below the expected allotment this year. So we are still working to any student that has not returned. We're reaching out to their families, trying to get them back into school. 700 allotments will impact some, 700 students will impact some of our instructional allotments. So we're, again, working to make sure our students all know that we're back and we've started and we're like 5 weeks in. So you can see our racial demographics or racial breakdown of our students. Title I, just Tuesday night, I thought this was relevant. Our board did approve our Title I plan for this year. And just to let you know, 54 of our schools are designated Title I. That was an increase of 3 from last year. So 54 of our 81 schools actually receive federal assistance in the form of Title I dollars.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Is that threshold still, it used to be 75% free and reduced lunch. You had to be designated Title I. You could have a school that was less than that Title I if you chose to designate it, depending on if you did it in rank order and how you divided your money up. I'm just kind of curious. My guess is that's probably changed.
It is. It's actually for us 50%. And the lowest you can go in the threshold, according to the federal guidelines, is 40. If we went to 40%, we could add 4 more schools in there, and our board is interested, as we move into next school year, to look at that. It obviously impacts the other schools that are kind of your smallest schools with concentrations of poverty, but our board is interested in, as we go into next school year, to look, if we were to come down to the 40% threshold, we would add 4 more schools.
You don't get more money. You just have to divide it up differently,
Exactly.
which is a lot more complicated.
Exactly.
And 40 was in present time. But I would like to ask this. Do you have good free and reduced lunch information now? Because I thought that's
it's
not being collected anywhere near the same way.
It's more of looking at, and I know last time, and I can send you all exactly how it's calculated, but it's not like student by student turning in forms anymore. Like, that's not how it's calculated. It really is looking at
probably
many other
based off
things.
the federal poverty.
Exactly.
Kind of numbers, because
it's a different calculation.
Because you have universal, I guess, breakfast, and maybe a whole bunch of schools.
And a lot of schools, and that went up tremendously. It's probably just 16 schools that we do not have universal lunch and breakfast.
Which means you don't collect free and reduced lunch.
Correct.
Kind of information at all. You just give everybody breakfast if they show up.
Yep.
Yeah,
So it's yes. So other than that, a little bit of transportation information. So you can see there, we have about 28,000 students riding buses in the morning and about 31,000 in the afternoon. You can see how many bus routes we're running in a given day. We have a new bus app this year called Edulog, which it's an improved app, but of course it hasn't been without its own issues as we go, but it's actually much improved from last school year. We still maintain about 55 driver openings, and you can see a few of the other openings that actually help service our buses. And so that's about where we are last year. It is a decrease from last year's driver openings, so we continue to have hiring fairs and hire. I am going to bring, I know that you all have been patiently awaiting us bringing back our market study, and on your meeting on October 10th, I think we'll be coming back with that. So thank you for your patience on that. School, so now going into, so that's a little bit of information about back to school. I'm going to now very quickly talk about some of our performance results from last school year. We just received those. We have about 9 schools that improved their letter grades. If you look across the board for schools rated A, B, and C, it's a little over half of our schools that have that designation. We're working hard to have all schools, be removed from D or F status. But again, what I always tell everyone, and what some of our folks that came to speak Tuesday night, parents and other staff from schools, there's such great things happening in schools. And even a school that might have a designation rating, you can walk into school and that's not what it would appear to be. Like if you walked into classrooms, you would see great instruction. I will say Cook is an example of that, and we've all been celebrating. It's been years, and they have reached a C. I know that when all of you were in school, if you got a C grade, you probably weren't like celebrating, yay, we got a C, but that is what our grading process kind of does. And so Cook is a school that has exceeded growth for the last 5 years, meaning when you compare them to other schools similar across the state, they're doing better. So they've exceeded growth for 5 years, and still we're having a grade of a D or F according to our state grading policy. And so they have actually gotten to a grade of C this year. I think it says a lot about the grading policy, and I do know our state had been looking into should we make changes to that policy, and they did a whole year of meeting with stakeholders and superintendents and trying to figure out should we change that, and it did not move forward. So just so you know, it did not move forward. So we will still maintain this current status, but we will celebrate where we see some bright spots.
Sure, I would
Yes.
definitely encourage you to, the formula has been flawed.
Yes.
And actually, I got a survey deal on
Yes.
that data collection, and my answer on the survey was I answered these same questions 10 years ago.
So I'm thinking.
And nothing happened
Yes.
10 years ago, and they were the same questions, basically. So that's been a problematic area. But I'm curious about, improving a letter grade, that's sometimes a little random, but
Yes.
because size of school makes a difference
True.
too. But how many schools went down a letter grade? I'm sure there were some of those.
Some went down a letter grade, and I don't know the number off the top of my head, but some did go down a letter grade. Many just maintained. And so I think it's probably, and I have my percentages written back there, but I can't remember the percent of schools that are a D or F, but some went from F to D. A few went down. Not that many went down. I think a lot of it was just maintained, which maintaining a D or maintaining an F is,
Well,
we've
the
gotta
Winston-Salem
keep
Journal
moving up.
decided to list all of the F schools.
Okay, did they?
Yes, they did. They listed all of the F
all of
schools
them.
by name in
Wow.
a chart, on a large chart. They did not mention any of the B, C, and D schools. But they mentioned the
listed
A
this-
schools and the F schools.
Interesting.
I think they might have had a couple B schools
Yeah,
in there.
I
But
do-
there was a big gap because there was only 20-something schools listed out of the 80.
Yes.
So there's a huge
There's a
pot
huge
that we're
gap.
not-
I will say
not
that
talking about.
the A schools, not enough. Like when I look at our performance, and there are schools that are like that close to it, we have 6 that were rated A's. And when I think about that and think about our schools, I'm thinking that is not enough. So we are like laser-like focused right now on how do we improve that. We have some schools that are outperforming. We have a school in our district, a high school, that is in the top 1% of the state of schools and performance, and they're a B school. So it's like it's an interesting formula for how these grades are calculated. But we are still, again, it is how we are judged with that grade, and we are continue to working to improve. those outcomes. And then here are the schools that exceeded growth. And so we had about 64% of our schools that met or exceeded growth, and this is a group that exceeded growth. And so, again, it's schools from all different areas. It's a good, diverse list of schools. But again, we have some very pointed things that these schools have done to be achieving that exceeding growth status. We do have some that might have been exceeding that are now meeting, that are also doing some great things. But again, all of these schools, as you talk to, what are the strategies? I do believe it is really by design when you make this kind of improvement, and especially 5 years of exceeding growth, there are very specific strategies and practices that our schools are doing. And so replicating those across all, holding folks accountable to those strategies. A lot of these schools, it is really their use of data and how they focus on making sure that any student that is not proficient, not on grade level, that they are receiving targeted supports. And so there's a lot of impressive data use from this group of schools. And so we continue to have principals work together to learn from each other, and it's just a process of continuous improvement. Here are some other highlights. These are our reading, math, and science, some of our improvement scores. And again, these are scores that have gone like an upward of 3 is about 3 percentage points. So 5th grade reading and 5th grade science went up 3 percentage points. When you think about that, moving up, some schools in some isolated schools may have improved 8 to 15 percentage points, which is incredible, and that's on proficiency. And so these are some highlights of our data that we are proud of, that they're moving in the right direction. And those that are not moving in the upward direction, we have very targeted plans to address.
It would be really helpful to see just the grades 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Particularly with comparing the other urban districts. And,
Yes.
and it's even better to see
could
how
do
they
that.
move. It's very hard to find this information online. You can do it, but you have to go to a bunch of clicks, and then you have to scroll through 2,000 schools and find the beginning of that district where it is. It's just like a needle in a haystack, and there are 100 of them.
We can absolutely provide that, Dr. Martin, because I think Andrew Kraft, he has probably easier access and can pull all that together.
For districts have a better
Yes,
access point, but the public access is terrible.
It's hard.
It's all public information, but it is almost impossible. Well, it's not impossible. It just takes
time,
forever to
right?
dig it up.
We'll provide that for the commissioners.
Helpful.
And then 3rd grade reading, obviously this is a goal, and we are improving the results, but again, 46.4%, that is still not back to above pre-pandemic levels of students reading on grade level. But we've got the right components in place. We've got all of our teachers, even new teachers, are now going to start their science of reading training. So what we're doing in reading instruction in the classroom is the right work. We've got great resources to teach reading. We've got lots of volunteers that are reading warriors or NC Ed Corps tutors. And so we've got all the components in place. We've got lots of community partners, churches that are pouring into our schools to support reading. And the most exciting thing right now, too, is there's an entire a community group that is focused on grade level reading campaign, and you have Love Literacy that is kind of facilitating that group, but you've got folks from all different sectors, not-for-profit, government, school district, business, all coming to the table to actually figure out, like, what else can we do as a community? Because we have our students 6 hours a day. They're in many other places the rest of that time, and so what does that look like? A great example of this, and I probably shouldn't call out one church because there's so many doing the work, but I know that Bishop Mack, on Sundays, they're one of our partners that they're doing reading support on Sundays, and they're having families there. Like, part of that is families are there at the same time, but it's things like that. It's like there's not one component to improving reading instruction. It is doing a lot of things really well, and I will say we appreciate the community being all in to addressing reading achievement in our district. And then the graduation. So last year we were so excited that we hit an all-time high graduation rate in the 4-year cohort. It went back a little bit to 85.6. Last year I believe it was 87 point something, but we're at 85.4 in the 4 years. But something we looked at this year is what would our 5-year, how many more kids graduated if we looked at the 5-year cohort, meaning they stayed in school one extra year to actually get their credits and to graduate, and we are at 88.1%, which is high for us for the 5th year. We don't, the state does report on 4-year and 5-year, but we've never really focused on that. But I think with, times are changing. I think if you took an extra year and you had the tenacity to do that, some of our students that have special needs may need that 5th year. Some that just have life circumstances may need a 5th year. And I think we're going to just continue to celebrate all students that graduate, whether it takes 4 or 5 years. Attendance, this is something that was not part of our report card, but just so you know, it is something that continues to be a challenge across the country, and that is chronic absenteeism, meaning students with high levels of absenteeism rates. And so in 22-23, we're at 37.6, and we've reduced that last year to 31.8. That's still too many students that are absent too frequently. So that continues to be, we have a whole plan for how to improve absenteeism, and I'll tell you, a lot of that is just what we're doing in our classrooms around rigor, relevance, and relationships. I mean, that's really huge for that, and enhancing ways for students to be involved. This year, I didn't put on a slide, but we have increased athletics in middle schools. We've added flag football to all of our middle schools, so that's another option for students who maybe have not been involved in extracurriculars, and now they're excited because they've got something they're interested in. And then dropout data. Our dropout data for many, many years has been too high. We have a specific plan for that. This data is always a year lagging, so in February we'll get last year's information, and these numbers are going to continue to decrease. And that is intentional work with finding students. And if they've enrolled in another place, they are not considered dropout. But if you can't find them and they're gone, they are considered a dropout. And so we have a new approach to addressing this, and that's why you can see it was decreased, and it's going to continue to decrease.
Okay. Is chronic absenteeism missing more than 18 days? Is that the number?
It's yes. It's more than, actually, it's not 10. It's more than, I think it's more than 15 days, Dr. Martin. I need to get that exact number.
It might. I have a memory of 18.
18? It probably is 18.
But only, I mean, that's a fairly recent, I mean, the definition of a label of chronic absenteeism
really
is fairly recent, but I think I did read that some
It is
time
18
ago.
because it's 10 is moderate, like 10 is a red flag, obviously. 18 is when it becomes chronic. What I will say is it is a new term post-pandemic. It was always just, what is your attendance rate? And you always reported, at least I did, on how many kids are at like 95% attendance rate or whatever. And now it's this chronic absenteeism. And because so many students were post-pandemic, were missing so much school. So it just, but I think there's probably at least 1 or 2 articles a week that come out in the journals I get, the national journals I get, that talk about chronic absenteeism. But there's a solution, and it's really working with our families closely. It's making sure kids are excited about coming to school and actually motivating them and helping them get there. And so there are ways to address that, and that is what we're doing. Facilities. Here are some of the projects I thought you might be interested in knowing where we are. Con Oak Middle School, that our students will be returning there. Staff will be moving in December, and students will be in their renovated building starting in January of this school year. And so, as you know, the students have been housed at Main Street Academy. And again, they'll be moving back and being in their renovated facility starting in January. East Forsyth High School, that work is underway and on time. We will be 2 nights ago, what's today, Thursday? 2 nights ago in committee, and it'll go to our full board in 2 weeks on the 24th. Our board did approve to take some funds that were in other projects that might have been there for, in case anything happened, and reallocate those to East, and the board did in committee approve that. So it'll be going to full board in 2 weeks. So you'll be getting that information very soon about how we want to allocate that to the East project. And then Brunson, our board did approve a general contractor, And luckily, the cost came down about $7 million lower than expected for that project. So we also, our board, we just had a workshop for facilities, and we'll be coming into you about these and voting on what we're going to bring forward to you, but it will be in October when we come back for those, for our request of the additional capacity dollars. Oh, and I know that I'm in this picture, but it's not because I wanted to be in the picture, but to show you the new weapon detection system that we are looking at. So this is about safety, and as you all know, it's been very much out in the headlines about what are we doing to keep our students safe. As you know, there have been recent threats across the entire state. I think I pretty much spent all night and all morning crafting messages and working with our team to make sure that parents understand when a threat is credible, when it's not credible. But yesterday, there were a series of people that found information on a state site that just listed all these schools, saying that something bad's going to happen in all these schools. And that, when people see that, they start to repost that. And so every single threat that is made, even when you're thinking, okay, we know what happened here, our law enforcement and our safety team, they respond to every one of those and they investigate every one of those. And then we honestly, with any type of threat, one of the things that makes our communities feel like, okay, if there was a threat, what are you doing next day in the morning? And so, we are very serious about the metal detection work. And last year we did put metal detectors in our schools. They're the Garrett and the CEIA systems. Those systems are extremely cumbersome. So for staff, they take many people monitoring them. They take time. They were taking about an hour for kids to get into buildings when we use those. But right now, that's the main system we have in our schools. We are looking at this open gate system. We're piloting 8 of them, and that's what that picture is. We did a press conference about that system for back to school. Parkland's one of the schools we're piloting in Glenn High School, and what you can see there, it is a very effective and efficient system. And Jonathan, on this next slide, you can see it's about 90% more efficient than the traditional metal detectors we have. In order to put those in all of our schools, so you could just do a daily process and it would be efficient and effective, it's about a $2 million expense. So we've been talking about this. On September 24th, we're going to talk to our board about going out to actually try to find these dollars. We're looking at state safety grants. We're looking at local donors. We're going to try to figure out how to do that. Just because we've had a lot of people, the other system is not efficient or effective, and it's causing a lot of staff to be out of classrooms, and we need our teachers to be able to be teaching and ready for kids. So that is, Open Gate is something you all will be continuing to hear about. And last but not least, we are always looking at our protocols. When something happens like what happened in Georgia, we as a team assess what actually happened there, and is there anything we need to address about our current processes. One of those, and even with the I Love You Guys training that we've done with law enforcement and with other first responder organizations in our community, locked and closed classroom doors are critical. We've had them locked, but they've been able to be open so that as kids come and go, but they need to be closed. And that's, if you look at what happened in Georgia, the door that was closed and locked, the student did not enter. And that happens over and over. So our doors have to be locked and closed. We've already done that with exterior doors, but it also has to be interior. And it's easy to forget because it's easy to keep that door propped because a kid's going to run out to go to the bathroom, or a kid's going to go. They need to be closed and locked.
I did read one of these days after accounts of the dates of that event in Georgia, and they had the system to lock doors. Of course, one particular class, they were doing some kind of, I'm sure they were screening tests, beginning things, and put a lot of people out in the hallway taking tests. And all those doors were locked, and they literally heard gunfire, and they couldn't get in anywhere. And so this one teacher opened the door, and a bunch of these people kind of came in that had been out in the hall. So if you're going to have doors locked for that potential hall sweep, then you can't put kids out in the hall.
You cannot.
I mean,
it is true.
The devil's in the details on all this stuff.
It
and
really is.
It's how you use the tools, so to speak.
Absolutely.
I do also want to I want to just verify this. Is it true that resource officers from the Sheriff's Department do not help with screening with the metal detector?
So they do not. They're there at the process, but as far as being on the line and the old equipment, you had to you had to search the book bag and the student had to walk under it. And if it went off, because you're searching the book bag, student walks under it, if it went off, now there needed to be a further search. That is all our staff. The law enforcement stays back in the event there is a problem. They're there, but they are not part of the search process. They're not part of that process. Again, it is last year, it was the last 2 weeks of school where there had been some threats, and I made the call with the support of staff and our board to have every school, every day using that system for the last 2 weeks of school last year. And central office, we were all assigned out to schools as well. So I was out helping. And honestly, as students came in, they also were getting a wristband so that you knew that they had been checked. Because kids, our campuses are very open. Kids come and go. You have kids that leave and come back. And so it can be cumbersome. Now, the new system is very different. If you watch before and after, like at Glenn and Parkland, it's fast, it's efficient. You really are not having to search all the book bags. It literally is, you hand the Chromebook around the corner, because the Chromebook would go off in the system. But it is very effective. But to answer your question, no, they're there, but they're not part of that process.
Just wanted to verify that.
Yeah. So, and then last things, FUSIS is a real-time intelligence that we are working with the city, the county, all of us are working. We have that system, and that is so that at any time, if there is some type of issue, everyone can see the same cameras. They can see the same. So that is something last year that came out of a collaborative session with law enforcement. And then the last thing is we have something free at our fingertips that we really haven't been using, and it's on our cell phones, and it's called Rave, and it is basically a panic button. And right now, our administrators and ADs are the ones that have access to that. And it basically allows you to hit a button. It has 4 different things. Do you need an ambulance for an emergency with a kid? Is there a fire? Like, there's 4 different buttons. We're actually going to take a school and really pilot using it, because what we want to find out is it would have to be an opt-in because it has to go on your cell phone. But if we should give that kind of access to everyone in the building, because what happens is there is it goes directly to law enforcement, and they can see exactly where you're at. And so it breaks down where's this happening? It goes right to where if a child, something happens to a child, a seizure, anything, and you need an ambulance and you hit it, it shows exactly where you are in your building. So there's it's just a pretty amazing system. So we're actually going to be piloting that in a couple of our schools, allowing anyone in the school to have access to it. Again, all of these things are layers of security. At the same time, those are security measures, but the best, just as important are all the things we are also doing around mental and behavioral health support for our students, and paying attention and making sure we know our students, and making sure that people are looking to identify if a child seems to be struggling or if a child needs help, and making sure parents know what to do in the event they're concerned about their child. Where do they go? What do they do? So again, it's about security, but at the same time, it's about all the other supports we have in place. And again, this year, as you all know, we have more social workers. That was a discussion during the budget season. We have more social workers in our schools, and that is something we need to continue to do, and making sure that our kids are getting the support they need. But these today, I just thought you might be interested in some of the security measures, because that's just it's a hot topic right now. I mean, safety and security, and every time something happens across the country, it makes us reassess and continue to do all that we can do. I mean, keeping our kids safe is first and foremost number 1 priority, and then learning. Learning is important as well. So,
is this Rave panic button additionally password protected? All the apps I have on my phone, if it's been opened and it's there,
yeah,
then you can go to any app and get to it. And obviously, if every teacher had one and somebody grabbed one and it was not extra password protected, a student could be calling a lot of people to school.
True. if it got into the hands of a student, I mean, that is true. So we would have to be, if we open this up and everybody has that access, we have to be very careful because it could become an issue, but I think you have to monitor it. You don't want an ambulance being called, for things that are not necessary all day long, or the fire department being called and someone saying that when that's not happening. So at the end of the day, our students should have their phones not out at all in school. They should be away. The only ones that should have them out are at lunch, and those are your high schoolers, at lunch only. And so with our new established cell phone policy, I am paying close attention to that as I walk into schools this year. And so, yeah, we would have to be very careful with that, because if we were to start using that and we were to look at our data and we are seeing that people are being falsely called, that would be, we have to analyze that. We have to believe, though, that your staff, if it is an added layer of protection for our teachers to feel like if something's happening and I can access immediate law enforcement versus calling the office, trying to report it, you also can call 911. So we're also analyzing, how is this more effective than calling 911? How many clicks does it take to do this, and how long does that take versus 911? And so we're analyzing that as well to determine, is it worth it? It's free. It's something the state already provides, so it's just something about should we be using it. So, and that is it. If anyone has any questions.
Got one, and then there may be others. Okay. I guess I read this some time ago, but you've received a grant to do, basically to study and hire some company that talks about doing sort of student reassignment issues. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And
Absolutely.
sort of how you got it and who is it a federal grant, and
Yes.
do they hire the contract? I'm just kind of curious of a few of the mechanics.
Yeah.
And particularly curious because I know that's a fairly sensitive topic.
Yeah.
And when you get into this.
And you know what? You made me think about that. In my next update, my next quarterly update, I can really hone in on that specifically too. But what I will tell you, it's called the Fostering Diverse Schools Grant. It is a federal grant, federal government grant. And our school, we got it for a planning year. And the planning year is to do analyzing and to gather feedback from stakeholders. The goal of it is to try to figure out, what are, our zones and our boundary system has not been really touched unless a new school was built for over 30 years. And when a new school is built, of course, then you look at the boundaries and you have to change them. But that hasn't been analyzed for over 30 years. So honestly, all this is, the planning year, is to analyze those, to get feedback, and to say, are there any changes that need to be made based on that? But the year one is just for planning and gathering feedback. The company that is hired is not dictated by the federal government. You can hire who you choose. I think our district hired Urban Strategies for part of that. And I can't remember, there's two companies. One is looking at the data, and Urban Strategies, I think, is the one helping us with community conversations. Our goal is to get out and talk to thousands and thousands of families, which is what right now we have town halls going on. And the questions are, what do you think? What do you think about that? The goal is not to do some kind of mass disruption of our school district or change. That is not the goal of it. It really is right now to analyze, do we need to make some updates 30 years later to any of our attendance boundaries? There may be changes that are needed. So that's in a nutshell. I can actually, though, we just resent all of the information to our Board of Education from the actual grant to what we turned in. We can share that with you all without any problem. And then our board, on the 24th of September, there is an update that's happening that night. Dr. Effie McMillan is our staff person that is leading that grant initiative, and she will be sharing an update with our Board of Education. So we also can share those slides with you, and you can tune in if you want to hear more about where we are.
When is that update going to be?
The 24th of September.
Hey, watch that.
Okay. Other questions?
The chairman may have taken my question, but is that what these flyers are about? I see Urban
Yes.
Strategies at the bottom.
That is exactly what that is. Yes. So they're going to all parts of our community, here, listening to parent voice and gathering the data that they, and bringing that all back together. Again, there is, one of the things that we have to do is make sure that our community and everyone is very clear on what we're trying to do with this grant. It really is about, is there any modernization that has to happen around our attendance boundaries that have not been changed for over 30 years? And so that we're in a learning phase right now.
The attendance boundaries have been changed, because every time a school's built, attendance
Right,
boundaries
true.
change.
The attendance boundaries when a school is built.
The process and choice has been adjusted, but the premise has remained the same for
Yeah.
30 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think, and again, this is analyzing zones, and it's not necessarily looking at the choice as an option for, so again, it's not looking at the choice policy, it's truly looking at our zones and how those zones were created. And that's another story for another day. You probably have way more knowledge of me, because you were at the table, I know, but how schools were put into certain zones. And is that still what we need to do this many years later? Are there any changes that need to be made? As schools are built, you've got to, like where we're building certain schools, you've got to address your boundaries. And so this is really just about a learning and discovery phase.
It's probably the reason that you have the highest market share among all urban districts.
Yeah, we are aware. We are aware. I know I saw something yesterday where Guilford was trying to do something more with their choice options for families. And it's probably because we do remain the district with the largest market share.
Just one other question. You have Narcan in the schools now. In each school, do you know how many units or vials of Narcan you actually have, and how many adult personnel are trained to use them? Hopefully more than one per school.
Yes, so I don't know the exact numbers, but I can get that with no problem. Our board last year passed the policy to allow Narcan in our schools. Right now, it is the school nurse that has it, and again, and most of those are our health department nurses. We do have some of our own, and then I need to find out who else. That's a really good question. I mean, I know law enforcement has them if there is a middle and high school, but then our school nurse has it, and there may be one more, and I need to figure out who else has that, and the training that was provided.
Well, then I should have refined my question. I'm talking about personnel there full-time, not a part-time school nurse.
Right. That is what I'm going to get for you. Like who full-time has it and what has the training been? That's been coming through our Katie Key, who is our director of nursing in the school district. I'll get that information for you.
Do y'all have enough Narcan now?
From what I have been told from Katie, we do. Like we actually do. That was part of, once we got the agreement, we haven't even paid for them. They have been given to us. So
the county has provided Narcan, and if they need more, we have more to provide.
yeah, it's definitely a partnership with our health department.
I don't have a question, but I do have a couple concerns, as I'm sure you do also. And I know that parent involvement is not what it should be, but I'm concerned with the third grade reading scores. I think it's just imperative that be improved, and also with the graduation rate. And again, I'll say it takes more than a teacher and a superintendent. So I hope that apparently at some point maybe parents will get involved in their kids' education.
Yeah, thank you. That is very important. I always tell people I take a lot of ownership of that. So I'm like, no, we can do this, but honestly, you can do it faster when everybody's all in, parents, community, kids, and our staff. Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, and our community is very generous, as we've seen through our bond referendums. I think if the public was aware of the $2 million funding you need for the more safety, I think they would step up.
I think you're right. So that once we go back to our board on September 24th, because that's another board item that night, the board wanted more information, we will probably go public with that request. So thank you.
I have questions about three of the items, hopefully brief. Chronic absenteeism, I'm sure I'm reading this right. So the indication is that almost 32% of the students total in the school, and chronic absenteeism is defined?
18 or more absences in a school year.
Do you have that broken down by
By grade
school
level?
Yes.
We do. It's not on that slide, but we can get that to you all so that you have that information.
Thank you. I mean, that certainly is an eye-opening statistic when you look at the need for the social workers that are able to reach out to the families that, are experiencing the problem and help determine what's causing it and how it can be fixed.
Absolutely.
And you indicated that for the Title I designation, increase of 3 schools, I'm sure you covered this. My apologies for having been held up a bit getting here this morning. But did you indicate what had caused the shift and
To adding 3 more schools?
adding 3 more schools?
We took our threshold down to the 50% threshold. So you've got a range that you can do as a school district. I mean, you can start at 75% of students poverty and just fund those schools, or you can bring it down 65, 60, all the way down to 40. Last year, because we know that we want to make sure that we can provide resources to schools where students are coming from economically disadvantaged homes, that we want to be able to provide those resources. And so we took it down to 50%, which is how 3 more schools got added. If we were to take it down to the 40%, which is the federal guideline that you can go down to, we would be adding 4 more schools. What happens there is that you then start to lessen the amount that some of your most impoverished schools would get. So that's why we haven't gone down to 40, but our board does want us to consider that as we go into next school year. So right now, we have 81 schools. 54 of them are receiving federal assistance through Title I. If we added 4 more to that, that would be 58 of our 81.
And before you took it down to 50, it had been at what percentage?
I think before that, it might have been at 55 or 60. I can't remember that actually, but that's an easy question to get answered as well.
Very helpful. And finally, to the question of the technology difference between what you're looking at, the open gate,
Yes.
and the other or more traditional systems. I hate to ask a technical question, but can you explain, in this case, by more efficient, do you mean it doesn't trigger on as many small items, or
Yeah, it really is designed to find weapons, and that's why we are doing this in the first place. I mean, the current systems find everything. I mean, and honestly, that's not why we're not doing weapon detection to find vapes. If we find vapes, we take them, but that's not the purpose of doing this. This is really weapon detection.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank
for being
you. Thank you, Dr. Martin. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to I made a list of the items. We'll bring you back in October. Thank you.
She's written them down for me.
All right, that's good. All right, thank you very much. We're ready now for Jackie Copeland with Partners Health Management Update, quarterly update. Thank you.
Welcome to the
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to come and update you on how Partners Health Management is serving Forsyth County. I know you have a pretty big agenda, so I'll go right at it and get to some of the key points I wanted to share with you, how things are going from Partners' perspective, serving the county. Just looking at members, when I always start out, because our focus is focusing on serving our members. We served over, for our two major populations, our Medicaid population and our state-funded population. Again, state-funded are those recipients that uninsured and qualify for one of the state's potential funding categories. For the Medicaid population, we had over 8,400 members that we've been able to serve them. I'm sorry, I'm referring, as you see, back to the fourth quarter of last fiscal year. On the state side, over 2,000 state-funded recipients who were able to manage the care and serve through our provider network. I talk about penetration rate. That's just the number of that Medicaid population that actually seeks services or want to seek services. We track that penetration rate. We're at 26.8, as you see. That's pretty steady now for Forsyth County. Just to give you a bigger preference or a bigger number perspective, from a national perspective, Medicaid populations managed nationally, they suggest you be at one out of every 4 Medicaid members are being served. So we're right there in that sweet spot for behavioral health. You'll see later this is going to change a little bit as I go through the presentation, so I'll go on. One thing I want to give you an idea on is just comparison of how Partners is comparing in the counties that we serve compared to our peers across the state, the other local management entities, managed care organizations. There's 4 of us now. The state just reduced that number down. Right now, and one metric that the state provides on a report to us is just how well we are doing. Those members who have been in type of inpatient facility and discharging, getting them into outpatient care within 7 days. That's a national kind of metric, and the state looks at that. Partners has continued to remain, lead the state for the last several quarters of being able to hit that metric. So again, I apologize. I can't provide that on a county level because the state's report doesn't break it down to that level for penetration rate. Next, talking about our innovations members, which is also a part of, I'll also talk a little bit about those who are receive IDD services, intellectual development and disability services. Our innovations members, those members who are on the state's innovation waiver recipients, we manage about 517 of those. We also have opportunity, because there are many more, as you see the number 850, that have met the criteria for the innovations waiver, but just we're waiting on a funding slot to be made available. The state provides those dollars, and so we're waiting for that piece. I know we've talked about in this group, and I want to say thank you. I know that you all as commissioners have advocated for that on a state level to get more innovation slots. So we are hoping and waiting. I think there was some discussion about the budgets discussions going on today. I don't know if this will be one of the items that the General Assembly will add funding to, but thank you for your advocacy for that. Of those 850 folks who have met the criteria and are waiting for a spot, what we've been doing is really focusing on if they are able to receive other services, be it funded by Medicaid or state-funded service, we make that available to them so they can get some service while on this waiting list. We're tracking that right now. About 31% are receiving other services. We're hoping to see that number increase. Based off the next bullet on this slide, the state submitted a 1915 I waiver to the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, and that was been approved a few months ago. So that opens up 1915 I services, and these are about 5 services that prior to that, folks on the innovations waiver could receive. Now, other folks who, again, waiting for a slot, who have intellectual development disability, they can now see those services. We're hoping to see more people avail themselves to those services. Next, I want to talk about some of the things that we're doing in the community. I'm not going to cover all of them, but a few key pieces. And I wanted to start off with something we want to thank the commissioners for, is for support for continuing to train not only county staff on mental health first aid, but also in the community. This past year, we trained over 201, well, let me back up. We certified 201 in mental health first aid, national model to be able to provide for any citizen who takes that, if they see someone who we've identified, maybe someone who may be going through a mental health crisis in their family, in their community, their neighbor, their coworker, church member, any other interaction, to be able to identify those people and some skills to get them to a mental health professional. Again, we've expanded that. Applaud the county because y'all have for a while now been training your staff to be able to offer that. And so quite a few, we do those on a regular basis on a variety of departments throughout of county government. So excited about that. But we've also kind of expanded that to folks in the community. We've done this with we have a YMCA that's asked us to do several trainings for them. We've also provided to some church groups in the community who have been really on the forefront of educating their congregants on that. So we've been doing that. And then also probation and parole. They have asked some of theirs. They get new people in to get trained on that. And that's open to anyone. We've even opened this up to on a probably quarterly basis. As we know, after COVID, we had to move to be anything that we see today that's via Zoom. We offer this via Zoom or Teams on a regular basis to anyone. So we've been trying to provide more opportunities to people can access this particular training. And one that goes along well with that is our training on question, persuade, and refer, known as QPR training. This is a suicide prevention training model. With some of the work that's been going on, we've been doing this training for a while, but we've been partnering with members of the Forsyth Focus, the group that's looking at how we can address suicide prevention and awareness in Forsyth County. We've been partnering with, again, that group comprises of you all, the Forsyth County Behavioral Health Department, Winston Forsyth County Schools, Mental Health Association of Forsyth County, NAMI also has been involved, and other providers, along with some specialty groups. We have a lot of participation from the Veterans Administration. And we're actually, I don't know if Deputy County Manager Denise Price has updated you yet, but we're playing more of these community conversations, another big piece of that. They'll be coming up in the fall. We're aiming actually to have one in the Kernersville area. I know y'all appreciate that. We're trying to move these around throughout our community. So with that training, we've been really focusing on that. And with that community conversation, one of the things we offer, along with access to information, resources, how to get help, and just how to address stigma around mental health and thoughts of suicide, we've also offering that QPR training. So we probably have, of that 162, probably about 40 people last year participating in those trainings too, based off us offering that with that community conversation. And now we're also looking at some new initiatives that we're putting forth going into this year. One is to really aim at how we can continue to connect our members that may be involved in the justice system. One of the things we're doing is putting together a team of care managers that will work with our members who may be incarcerated either locally or at state level, and try to mostly incarcerate at the local jail to try to get them into services. The whole idea is to work our members to make sure we connect with them. And it's going to be what we're doing is not to duplicate, but just how we can accentuate what's going on for our members to make sure when they're released, they can get plugged in really quickly. So we're also already working with the jail health provider, NavCare, and we're also soon going to schedule a meeting with the sheriff to talk more about this and see if their support in doing that. And finally, as I kind of gave a little mention to earlier, I've been talking to y'all about a tailored plan. Y'all been hearing about that for years now. Finally, July 1st, we've started operating a tailored plan. So that's been underway, and now beyond just the behavioral health services, and again, it's going to be a small population that we'll be serving, but for those folks, we'll not only be managing the care for their behavioral health, but their physical health, which includes everything from dental to vision to prescriptions to hospital care, nursing care, the whole gamut of covered services that the state has in place and the Medicaid to cover that. So we're excited about that, and that's underway. It's been a big lift, but we're up for it. One of the big things we want to do is do this transition. As we do it all, we try to focus to make sure that as members transition, we want to make sure we maintain continuity of care. No one gets, try our best to hope for keeping anyone being lost. That's our goal we strive for. So that concludes my briefing for you. I'm happy to entertain any questions that the commissioners may have.
Thank you, Jackie. Questions?
Okay. The plan that you're doing, the developing jail and reentry care.
Yes, ma'am.
That sounds very much like stepping up to me. Is it? I know you've been to some of our
Yes.
graduations.
Yeah, how this will not duplicate that is to kind of partner with those, we have some members that have care management, some significant needs. This will be those care managers to help identify what are the gaps, such as just making sure someone comes, they're in the jail and they're getting released. That one, we're hoping to participate in the staffing if they have at the behavioral health unit, to be, if they're a member of ours, to be able to talk about, okay, what are some things we can do to prepare when they come out. We will be partnering with the Stepping Up and talking to them, so it won't be any type of duplication. Hopefully, it'll be ways that for our members, because it's not a big number we're talking about here. Compared to what they typically work with, is to try to work with them and support what they're doing. We're real cognizant of the fact that the county has put a lot of support in a very good program. I just have to attend those meetings and not to conflict or just hopefully accentuate what they're doing.
Other questions?
The innovation waiver statistics, let me just clarify, are these for site-specific?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
And I was at one of Manager Robinson's public input meetings that the problem was raised about an inadequate, basically a provider shortage. So when you indicate you have 517 members receiving innovation waiver, tailored care management, do you mean you have 517 funded slots?
Yes.
Do all of those folks have providers?
If they choose to, they can. Once you get innovation slots, you get a myriad of services with that. Along with services, you also get some funding up to a certain funding amount. It's now been raised to what's $135,000 annually to up to $184,000 that they can choose based on willingness to participate. We do see some parents take advantage of that. I can get a number of that for you. Some to choose for whatever reason not take advantage of those services. I can get a number for that for you to give you more specifics on those who don't.
Let me check. Am I asking the right question?
It is the individual that contacts us very often and just kind of the concerns about lack of individuals being able to provide the service timely and consistently.
Probably direct service providers, DSPs. That is a challenge, like we've seen across the labor front in regard to after COVID. Some of these positions, they're not, the hourly pay is not that high compared to other options. The state of North Carolina tried to address that by increasing kind of a baseline to up to, I think, $18 to pay people per hour to kind of attract and sustain people. Okay. That's been a challenge because there are other options on the market they can go to and be able to work. And so what we've been trying to do is we've enhanced our rates to be able to try to work with certain providers, say more. You have certain members, families who have some significant needs maybe. And so what we've done is on an individual basis did either a rate enhancement because we know this maybe it's a child or adult may have some needs that require a little more attention, and so work with providers to provide more money to hire more people. But yeah, it's a challenge. There's several groups that are really focusing on this issue statewide because it's more statewide, it's a national kind of concern right now. So yes.
For me to better understand the challenges of the program, is it possible to quantify how many families are in the situation where they've got the funding, but they haven't been able to access the services they need on today's provider market. So that,
Yes, what I can do is go back and look at our numbers to see if we can find that information of that piece. For those who have, as you stated, who have said they need a service, and because of just unable to find labor, able to fill that spot, I can do that and share that with. Thank you.
What's interesting, and I have been involved in this particular issue for a while, and I'd probably answer Jackie's answer a little bit differently in that the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services created basically a kind of software package about, I'm going to say we're pushing 4 or 5 years ago now, that was supposed to do exactly that, so that you would know whether service A was provided for client A. You know, I mean, it was going to match it. You would know whether they were there. It was basically the recipient of the service would be able to indicate whether that service was provided. And I remember hearing, I think, a person from North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services say, yes, we're training folks and it will be out in 6 months. Remember I said it's about 5 years ago? Well, it hadn't happened yet. That's not available. And it is my opinion that you will not be able to find that information. Now, Jackie could find complaints and probably have a complaint-driven, well, we got complaints about that, but a lot of people don't take time, they're just frustrated, and they're not going to take time to go complain about it again. Sometimes, once they get something met, then they don't bother to go through all that process. And I know exactly the case that you are speaking of, and that's it is complicated, but I'm very, very much aware of that. But that'd be a great thing, maybe at your next quarter report, if you could tell us the status of this. It has a name, I can't remember.
Electronic visit verification.
That's it, electronic visit verification, EVF. No, electronic visit verification, EVV, yes. And that was the big rage. And am I about right? 4 years ago it was promised?
You're correct. Continue to work with the state because they rolled out in segments for certain services, not all. I think the big push this year is for the personal care services, which probably the individual that you met with was referring to. So again, we'll go back and try to find information.
Now, maybe you could give us an update on the EVV rollout and where that is. Because everybody was thinking it was coming and it just never happened.
I will add that to my list for next time.
okay. Thank you.
And thank you for your time. But one final thing, the final conversation the Commissioner Wilson mentioned in regard to Narcan, one thing that we've tried to do is partner, because we've been fortunate enough to get some, I should have hit this already on my presentation, but one thing we've been fortunate enough is to go out to some various state and other grants for by Narcan and some other sources such as that. And so what we've done is we were really fortunate to persuade the state to use some of their unspent money on this particular topic aimed at that. And so I know that the county already has their vending machine program. So we were able to go out and get about 4 to 6 months supply to donate to you all or share with you all for that. So we dropped off at your Forsyth County pharmacy, I guess last month. So just ways we can make sure people can't be out there to have a Narcan that's just definitely save lives. So thank you for your time, and I'll add that to my list for next time.
Thank you, Jackie. Next, we will hear from Chris Murphy.
Good morning, Commissioners. Hope you are doing well. You're not going to hear from me very long because I'm going to quickly turn this over to Amy Crum, our Assistant Director, who's going to give you a preview of what we've been working on primarily for the last 2.5, 3 years as far as long-range planning goes. But with that, I will just give you a quick update on staffing and work volume updates. If you look at the permit office, the planning division, and the inspections, plan review, field, and zoning staff, we have one vacancy amongst all in each of those 3 areas. So we're about 96% staff. We feel good with that. That's in contrast to a lot of other city and county agencies, other units, whether it be in the public or private sector. We feel good where we are with our staffing levels. As far as the permit office, timeliness of reviews, again, has continued to improve. We are still having high call volumes, and we're continuing to work on solutions with that. Year to date, we've issued over 16,000 permits, which puts us, if we continue, and again, that's all permits, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, et cetera, and building. That would put us, if the numbers continue with this trend, we'll actually issue several thousand more permits this year than last year. In the planning division, currently we, year to date, have processed 45 rezoning requests, 18 subdivision requests. We've signed over 26 major subdivision plats. We have signed over 100 minor subdivision plats. We've had over 100 sketch plan reviews, which are our Friday morning free kind of review of plans prior to them actually coming into our submittal process. We offer that as a free service. We've done over 100 of those year to date. We've processed and handled over 3 UDO text amendments. Currently, you have seen all of those. There is one that will be coming to you very soon, which is cleaning up a zoning board of adjustment discrepancy we found with general statutes and a couple other cleanup things. We've been procedurally doing it correctly, but our ordinance isn't in line with state regulation as far as some voting requirements. So that's a cleanup. 97 certificates of appropriateness, which are historic reviews. And to date, we have completed 3 public art installations. As far as inspections, again, very busy. All field inspections are generally handled. I think of our 51,000 inspections that we've handled year to date, which again is on pace to be over last year's numbers by 3,000 or 4,000. We have handled 95% of those within the day of being requested. So next day service essentially, and that's very, very good. Looking at some development related trends, I believe you've probably received this, hopefully. I can't remember if I brought physical copies or if it got sent over, but hopefully you've seen this. But these are our quarterly dashboard numbers for the second quarter of the calendar year. You notice as far as 2024, as far as our total permit volume, we're a little down from 2020 and 2021, but we actually have issued, this is our highest quarter as far as single family residential permit issuance. Over $107 million of constructed value just in a 3-month period of time. This is looking at non-residential construction, so commercial, a little bit of new, but primarily redevelopment type projects. Again, it's our second highest quarter in looking at quarter to quarter comparisons over the last 5 years. This is just a breakdown of the permit value, $329 million of total permit value within that quarter. That just breaks it down into the various sectors. This is looking at total number of single-family residential permits issued, or total residential permits issued for that quarter. Again, 391 single-family homes, so a high for that 5-year snapshot. No multifamily issued this quarter, but again, that's kind of cyclical. We probably have some in the pipeline that are probably getting ready to be issued. Just looking at non-residential square footage, again, a lot of redevelopment, not a lot of new construction, but again, total numbers comparable to what we did in 2021 as far as square footage goes. And this just gives you a map as far as where those permits were issued within this quarter. With that, I'm available to answer any questions if you have it on that. Those numbers, again, I wanted to keep my updates somewhat brief because we wanted to provide you an update on where we are with Forward 2045, which is the comp plan. I know that there are two members of the commission that have been through multiple reviews and approvals of past comp plans, and we do have a new commissioner who has gone through the same process whenever he was a city council member. But again, keep in mind, and I'm going to turn it over to Amy, but this is a aspirational type document. This looks at high-level policies and things that we have heard from the community that they say we should be looking at. None of this changes policy. None of this changes rules, laws, regulations. This is a blueprint for where we want to go over the next 20 years. So anything that actually affects change will come back to both the commissioners and the city council, depending on what it is, if we actually change any rules or laws as a result of these recommendations and research that we'll be doing over the next few years. So with that, if there aren't any questions, I'm going to turn it over.
I do have a question.
I'm sorry.
Please, and I've got one short one too. Go ahead.
This is not in any way a blame game. It's just a question that I need an answer to. You know what we've been through with the Piedmont compulsion zoning and how the zoning was changed after we approved it.
Oh, you're talking about Piedmont Hoist and Crane.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Hoist and crane.
Yes. Is there some way that that might not ever happen again?
The zoning wasn't changed, the use was changed. Whenever they brought their plan through, they have it labeled as manufacturing B, but they previously had the use manufacturing C approved on that piece of property. To answer your question, not with the way that happened, but you're going to be having like a zoning case probably in a couple months that we're actually going to hear at planning board today, which is in the same area. It's on Wahlberg Road, but they're requesting LI. That doesn't allow for the use of manufacturing C. They're requesting LI, it's manufacturing A, manufacturing B, so everything would take place indoors. In order to ensure that it would be, if you do entertain a GI, which is the only zoning district that manufacturing C is allowed in, that we ask those questions up front as far as with the petitioner and get assurances as to what they do plan on doing. Will there be outdoor activities, and if so, is there a way that we can mitigate those impacts?
Well, you know, I wish that we had known to ask that question when we were doing the zoning. It has been a headache.
I understand.
I'm telling you. Those folks are still extremely upset, and I don't blame them. And I'm just hoping that in the future, we can be warned that something like that could happen. Thank you.
Noted.
Follow up on that. You were assurances, and Mr. Attorney, if we asked those questions and there were things that the board did not say it was something the board did not want to do, it would be have to be some kind of condition wrote down, and it was a condition that the petitioner didn't agree with, then the board's got an option to either approve it or not. Something along those lines, would that be the safeguard?
That is something that could be done. To echo what the concerns of Commissioner Wisenhunt, you know, there's a lot going on in the UDO, and so there are a lot of things that we need to be aware of, and we're all trying to do a better job of bringing that to your attention. So this was something, as Chris has explained, that could be changed at the staff level. And so, you know, for particular uses, that's something that the board may wish to revisit at some point as to whether that particular UDO provision should continue to be that way.
Actually, I had a follow-up question very much in line with Commissioner Linville's. It's my understanding from my previous city council experience that in order to guarantee that an assurance is worth more than the paper is written on, or actually worth more than the hot air that comes out when an insurance is given. It has to be in writing in the rezoning approval. And my understanding is that specifically excluding a use from an approved zoning is a standard way of ensuring that a guarantee has to be kept and cannot be modified by staff action.
You are correct. The issue, I mean, the case that has this and has been an issue for 4 or 5 years now is the problem is that the initial rezoning that was approved in the early 2010s or late 2000s, I can't remember exactly the date, it was whenever Caterpillar opened and there was a hauling company that was storing axles at this site and hauling them from there. So the entire operation was an outdoor operation, and thus, whenever the initial rezoning got approved, it was approved for a laundry list of uses, including the use manufacturing C. Then fast forward to whenever they brought the site plan amendment back through to do the site plan to show the building, they had labeled their use as manufacturing B, but they still had all of the uses that were approved with the original rezoning. It wasn't changing the zoning, it was a site plan amendment to change the plan. So whenever the project went through the process, it was labeled as manufacturing B. Whenever they came in to get their permits, they were like, yeah, it's not really manufacturing B, it's manufacturing C. We're going to be doing this outdoor sandblasting, but we're not actually changing the site plan. So there wasn't a change to the plan. They just said, no, we're not doing B, we're doing C. So because they had the original use approved with the original rezoning, we didn't have any choice but to approve it because it didn't change the plan. So that's kind of the ebb and flow of this. Had this come in as a new request, this being Piedmont Hoist and Crane, when the site plan amendment came through and they did not request the use manufacturing C and showed it as manufacturing B, and then later decided they wanted to do manufacturing C, it would have had to have come back to the commissioners for them to do that.
I understand the explanation that's been provided on why it was a non-discretionary staff change. However, I just want to confirm, I'd like to have you confirm or tell me that I'm wrong, that the board, had it known it needed to do that, had the option at the time of the new request to exclude that use or say we will not approve the site plan so you can't build your building.
Correct. You are correct.
Okay. Because I think that's the answer to Commissioner Whitney's excellent question. How do we keep this kind of problem from happening again in new cases when the community has come in and said, we don't want this rezoning because we're afraid they're going to have that kind of use? Then we just make sure that it's excluded in writing in the approval. And if they say, no, we're not going to accept that, then we know that that their assurances are worthless.
Correct.
Okay.
You are correct.
All right.
That would be the process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Was there another question before I turn it over to Amy?
Only a quick one.
Okay.
And you actually don't have to answer today, but we're getting ready to have some interest rate changes likely in the country. And I'm kind of curious, as you look at all those charts we just looked at, kind of your experience on the lag time of the ebb and flow of construction as interest rates go down. I mean, are we looking for, assuming this goes for several cycles, 0.25% for several meetings, down maybe several years, how fast are we going to see a kind of a re-engagement of even more building? It seems to me that would be a direct result, particularly in the multifamily and other areas, that would be a residual of interest rates declining.
I believe you are correct. It's one of those things that's it's because we got in such a housing deficit during the Great Recession of the late 2000s and early 2010s. We didn't have any many subdivisions approved during that period of time. So then whenever the rebound happened, all the lots that were in place got taken down. So now we have a lot of subdivisions getting approved quite honestly, from a single-family standpoint, we are busier now than we were in the late 2000s prior to the Great Recession. I would say as the interest rates continue, if they do trend downwards, we will see an uptick in commercial. We will see an uptick in multifamily. I think we'll see an uptick in single-family residential, but I don't think it will be as pronounced as we'll probably see in the other two because, again, given the housing needs that we have, I think, we're continuing to see that volume work. What we might actually realize are some opportunities for, folks who've maybe been standing pat to wait for interest rates to come down to do additions, to do maybe they want to do a mother-in-law suite, but it's been cost prohibitive due to construction costs and interest rates and those kind of things. I think we might see a movement there, but I think single family will remain steady. I think we'll see an increase in commercial permitting.
Yep. Thank you. I didn't mean to sort of.
And following up on that question, I saw that in the trends data, the value of the single family, of new residential construction was up noticeably, but looking at the units, it's flat from last year. Is that associated primarily with the interest rate, do you think, or?
I don't know if the interest rate is probably more reflective of again, the continued increase in construction costs. Because again, keep in mind, this is, if someone says it's going to cost them $300,000 to build a house, that's what they put on their permit. That same house may have cost $250,000 to build a year ago. At the end of the day, John Burgess and his staff, once it gets built, they're going to assess a tax value, which is kind of independent of the other. But obviously, as costs go up and as costs of materials go up and costs of houses go up, that sort of also drives where that tax value is. But you're right. The increase in costs is directly proportional and directly related more to the construction costs than it would be the interest rates, but it's all intertwined.
Thank you.
If there is anything else, I do want to turn it over to Amy, and she's going to go over this. I do want to let you know, of course, this is, we've been giving you some updates all along. This has been a 2 to 3 year process. It's been a total team effort, but the three folks that are here today, Amy Crum, who's Assistant Director, and Tiffany White and Kelly Bennett, who are Principal Planners, are the primary architects of this document. And again, I think they've done a great job both in the outreach and in writing this and synthesizing that information. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amy and let her kind of walk you through this.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Right.
All right. So again, this is the for 2045, our new comprehensive plan. It is not an update to Legacy 2030. It is a completely new plan. And just to start at the beginning, what is a comprehensive plan? As Chris mentioned, it is a guide for future growth and development. It is a vision document and it's community driven. It does not change regulation. It is merely a guide for future changes, either in rezonings that may come forth to you or for changes to our amendments or city policies. And it's also utilized for topic-based plans as a foundational document for those topic-based plans or city and county policies or where tax expenditures go. Looking at the timeline, we did start this process back in 2021 with our research, and this looked at sort of our development trends, our social and economic trends, as well as demographic data. We did do sort of a literature review of new comprehensive plans that had been recently adopted across the nation to see what they're including, what the new sort of layouts and features they were including, to kind of get an idea of what we wanted to include in our plan. Starting in fall of 22, really with the fair, the 22 fair, we started marketing the plan and going out to community events and having a table and letting folks know that we were doing this process, and started to gather contact information to inform residents as the process went on. Starting in the spring of 23, we sort of went online with our website and a survey that we then sent out to the community. We started doing stakeholder meetings, meeting with our boards and commissions to start developing some initial feedback. In the fall of '23, we had our first outreach meetings, public input meetings, where we shared the initial survey information that we were gathering to, again, try to get some more detailed information and sort of whittle down, as you will, into the input and what really understanding what folks wanted to see into the future. Starting this spring, we've really started basically drafting the document. We went out to the public in July and August with a draft goals and strategies to gather some feedback on those and amended the draft as needed based off that input. And hopefully, we are working towards adoption over the next couple months. It is going to Planning Board today for a public hearing, and we are aiming to come to you for public hearing in November, as well as the City Council in November for adoption. So just looking at our outreach and participation, we tried to do a pretty broad-based outreach effort to gather as much input as possible. Again, we had that online survey. We had over 2,900 survey participants, which was great. It makes it, I believe, 98% statistically relevant in the information that we gathered. We had over 4,000 written comments. We attended 16 community events. These are like the Walkertown Falls Festival, the fair, the Apple Festival, those sorts of events where we could have a table. We had 9 stakeholder meetings, and we also had 20 public input meetings from starting the fall, the spring, and then the summer as well. And then we had team presentations trying to get their input and get them involved in starting to think about planning in their community and what they would like to see into the future. We utilized the city's recreation programs in the summer at 3 different locations. We did a little children's booklet, again, just trying to get them to start thinking about their community. Again, we had the website. We're actually over 10,000 site sessions at this point. All of our information that we've gathered across this entire process is on the website. So if anyone wants to see those 4,000 survey comments, they can. They can go on there. All of that input is on there, as well as a draft copy of the plan, both in online version and a print version. The city's marketing department did produce one video, which is also on the website, and we did a robust marketing campaign that included TV, radio, social media, and billboard advertising, and that had over 1 million impressions. And I'm not the best at marketing to really explain what an impression is, but my understanding is that it came across to someone's view at least 1 million times across that entire time frame. This is a map showing sort of where our community events were held, where the public input meetings were held, and where the teen outreach events were held. And this really shows you that we tried to be across the community as much as possible. We really wanted to go where the people were. So instead of trying to make folks come to us, we tried to go to them. One of the key factors that came out that we knew that we needed to discuss, and it really came out in the survey input, was this idea of competing interests for land. Forsyth County, as you know, is number 4 in population out of all the 100 North Carolina counties, but we were number 60 in land size. So we have a fairly high population, but a very small land size, and we're growing. Not as much as Charlotte or Raleigh areas, but we are growing. And so with that, we're also about 75% built out, and that means that land has been developed per the zoning in place to the maximum extent. So at least about 25% of land left that could be developed, roughly. And looking at our survey results, we found 3 items that were really competing for this remaining 25%, and that's housing, of course, which we know about, economic development opportunities, and then land preservation. Land preservation came out a lot in the survey about folks wanting to look about land preservation both from a sustainability standpoint, a quality of life standpoint, a resiliency standpoint. So it hit on a bunch of different topics, this idea of land preservation. When we went out to the public in the fall, last fall, we asked folks to rank these in order of what's the most important to them. They're all important, but what's the most important to them? And there was no slam dunk winner. They were very close, but land preservation actually was the number 1, followed by housing, followed by economic development. And so we utilized this information in when we drafted our goals and strategies, knowing that we have housing needs that need to be met. We need to provide quality jobs for our residents, and so that's economic development. But in order to, we had to be creative in how we do that in order to allow for the opportunity of land preservation. And so a lot of the goals and strategies speak to that dual nature of trying to provide opportunities for all three to exist. We've centered this plan around the vision themes. It is not like Legacy 2030 where there is sort of a chapter on various different topics. It's really centered around the 5 vision themes, and that is very intentional. We wanted to create a sort of shorter document. It's less than 100 pages, so that is a lot more concise, but it's also a lot more digestible for the average individual to sort of not feel that they can't read it or understand it and they'd be intimidated by a 250, 300-page document. And so the vision is in 2045, Forsyth County and Winston-Salem will have attainable housing and stable neighborhoods, strong economic opportunities, connected and accessible spaces, a vibrant character and identity, and a sustainable and healthy environment. And through the collective implementation of these themes, we will have managed growth and land use. And this really speaks to that growth management plan that we've had in the document in the past. Each of the goals and strategies meets 3 guiding principles, at least one of the 3 guiding principles of equity, livability, and resiliency. These were one of the items that we spoke about in our survey. We sort of asked folks what are the most important items out of 8, and these were one of the 3. But when you look at how do you incorporate equity, livability, or quality of life elements and resiliency into planning, into the community, it's through things like housing, job training, job opportunities, quality of life measures, access, those sorts of things. So we felt that as long as these goals and strategies are meeting these principles, they will be incorporated. Going through, I'll go really briefly through the vision elements here. Talk about the goals. I will say the goals are in no particular order. They're just listed. So it's not a priority order. Goal 1 is not more important than goal 5. So the first goal in housing relates to just housing choice and housing availability just across the spectrum. Goal 2 talks specifically about low income and moderate income housing, affordable housing. Goal 3 talks about sort of trying to address and rectify some of the past policies that have been implemented across the city and county that have created inequities within the system and sort of looking at addressing those as best as we can. Goal 4 is about creating well-designed neighborhoods that have access to services. And Goal 5 talks about looking at housing insecurity and homelessness, at least in the realm that we can as a planning department. Homelessness is a really broad issue, and we have a little sliver of it in the planning world that we can address through making sure that we have housing options for people, particularly sort of housing options for those sort of trying to, before they fall into homelessness, but also when they're coming out of homelessness, working within that realm. From strong economic opportunities, the first goal is pretty simple. It's just to recruit and retain companies that provide good quality jobs. Goal 2 talks about having business and industrial sites available. Goal 3 looks at economic opportunities in the East and Northeast Winston-Salem, Forsyth County. This is an area in the past that has been sort of excluded from economic development opportunities, but this is also where the Beltway is right now. So we know it's going to be an area where there's going to be pressure. So how do we take advantage of that, and how do we address some of those past sort of underserved areas? Goal 4 is about economic mobility. We are one of the bottom 3 across the country in terms of economic mobility, or the ability for individuals to sort of move up the economic ladder. So how do we address that? And we address that here through workforce training, educational programs, and those sorts of things. Goal 5 is really talking about revitalizing downtown Winston-Salem as an economic center. And Goal 6 relates to sort of our local economy of being entrepreneurs and innovators. And Goal 7 talks about fostering sustainable local agricultural economy. This speaks again about the opportunity for land preservation. It's not enough just to preserve farmland if you don't have the economy around farming and agriculture be viable as well. And that includes things like agritourism and also having sort of the processing facilities, the cold storage facilities, the farmers markets, and those avenues to really support a farmer in the economy. Looking at connected and accessible spaces, this is really about access and transportation. Goal 1 is about sidewalks, greenways, and bike lanes. Goal 2 is about improving our transit system. Goal 3 relates to creating a sense of safety, so people feel safe traveling from point A to point B. Goal 4 is about access generally for all individuals, no matter their age, ability, or income, so they have access to public services and amenities. Goal 5 looks at sort of mutually supportive between land use decisions and transportation decisions. We hear a lot in our zoning cases that come before us, the transportation impacts of particular housing developments, for example. So how do you merge those, and how do you be mutually supportive of those two things? And then goal 6 is really about connectivity. How do we make sure that our neighborhoods are connected and our streets are connected going forward? For vibrant character and identity, Goal 1 speaks to public works, creating well-maintained and beautiful public works, whether it be parks or libraries or schools. Goal 2 is maintaining clean and attractive neighborhoods. Goal 3 is around tree canopy and green spaces. We heard a lot about preservation of trees and tree canopy and using non-invasive species, and so this really speaks to that. Goal 4 and 5 really speak to historic preservation. Goal 4 is about sort of the regulatory side of historic preservation and the preservation of actual buildings. Goal 5 is really about sharing our story and sharing our history to people and having cultural tourism about that and letting folks know about our history. Goal 6 is about, again, preserving our rural areas. Goal 7 talks about public art. Sustainable and healthy environment, that changed. So the first goal is about sort of mitigating the climate change impacts that will happen locally to Forsyth County. Those impacts will be very different in Forsyth County than they would, a coastal community. So really trying to mitigate our local effects. Goal 2 is about providing access to clean air, water, and green spaces for all residents. Goal 3 is about mitigating the sources of pollution from land use, things like stormwater, erosion, those sorts of elements. Goal 4 is about connecting parks and greenways to create an interconnected network for people and wildlife. Goal 4 is about local ecology and landscaping and preserving and protecting those. And then Goal 6 speaks to local food economy, or creating and eliminating, food access issues, eliminate food deserts, making sure folks in our community, no matter where they live or any of their socioeconomic status, they have access to healthy foods. And looking at managed growth and land use, again, all of the goals and strategies within the 5 vision themes really come into play and are implemented in managed growth and land use. You'll see a lot of overlap, and that is intentional. Again, Goal 1 is about rural preservation. Goal 2, talking about prioritizing development where infrastructure already exists, or infill development, you may say, both from a resource allocation and really making good use of our resources and allowing for that land preservation to happen while meeting the needs that we have, but also from a fiscal sense. Makes much better fiscal sense to use the infrastructure that we have in place now instead of expanding out. Goal 3 is being strategically about our expanding Forsyth County's developable land. This again speaks to infrastructure, mainly sewer expansion, utilizing sewer where it's at before we start expanding out. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the growth management plan. And Goal 4 talks about compatible transitions between land uses. How do you transition between large lot rural development into a commercial, from suburban into a higher density commercial? What are the appropriate transitions? I believe I showed this to you the last time I was here, but this is our draft growth management plan. I'll speak to this one, shows a little bit better of the areas that have been changed. I don't know if this will show. Hopefully you can see my mouse here. But the areas, the small area outside of Louisville, the small areas, the two areas, smaller areas around Idles Dam, and then the area out on Wahlberg, these all were GMA4. They're now shown as GMA3 because there are sewer projects underway in those areas. When sewer is made available in an area, it automatically transitions to GMA3. That's how it's always sort of worked in our planning. The larger area here to the sort of southeast of Clemens, that area was shown as GMA4 in Legacy 2030. It was shown as GMA3 in Legacy, the original Legacy, so we're going back to the original Legacy recommendation there. The larger area here up in the northern section, this really speaks to that expansion of areas in north and northeast of Winston-Salem, Forsyth County, really as it relates to the Beltway. The Beltway runs sort of here. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but that's going to change the dynamic of growth in that area, absolutely, 100%. And we worked with the utilities staff to look at how do we expand sewer in these areas. This area is also where the ridge line is. So any sewer expansion in this will have to be done by lift station. It cannot be done by gravity fed lines. And so what makes the most sense? And we actually looked at 4 possible basins. This was the largest one, and we thought it sort of provided the best potential. The other 3 were over sort of to the east of it, north of this area right here. And just understanding that this area sort of that's already GMA4 will be developed before we move into GMA5 first. Just from a standpoint, it made more sense to go with the larger, just shy of 4,000 acres that we show here. We figure past the age of this plan is when sewer expansion would happen for those areas. We do include implementation items as part of the document at the end. It is not an exhaustive list by any means, and it's organized by theme and goal. We really wanted this to be flexible. Things change. Funding sources change, staffing levels change, priorities change, best management practices come on. We have opportunities present themselves that we haven't thought of yet. So we wanted there to be flexibility in the order of how things were done to take advantage of that and to really be able to handle those changes. And so that's why there is no timeline for completion of these items, because we may think an item is short-term right now, but then an opportunity presents itself and something shifts. And so just to really be nimble and flexible as changing conditions happen. With that, that's all I have. I'll answer any questions you may have. And then again, this goes to Planning Board for public hearing today, this afternoon, and then it'll likely come before you in November for briefings and public hearing, both for y'all and City Council. And the document is online for anybody who's watching. Please go online. It's there. It's both in an online version and a print version. Read it, absorb it, as well. If you're interested in the comments that we've heard, that's all online as well.
Any questions? Thank you.
I have a couple of questions and comments. First, let me just really applaud the effort to put this kind of plan together as we think about moving in the future for our county, especially for our neighborhoods. So this might be a question to our deputy manager, but I wonder, does the county receive Section 3 HUD assistance directly or indirectly as it relates to the affordable housing piece?
That funding goes to the Housing Authority.
Okay. And so I guess the reason why I asked that question is because through Section 3, that then allows for, of course, the affordable housing, but in addition, those who build affordable housing also are able to sort of be enhanced in their delivery of these affordable housing. And I make that point because, as we know, there is definitely an issue with the MWBE, historically underutilized businesses across city, county, school district. And I think as we are talking about this Forward 2045 plan, we need to be very specific versus high level talking about it. How do we, I think where the road meets the rubber, be engaged. And so that the goal for economic development in East Winston especially caught my attention, and that's why I wanted to talk about Section 3, but it looks like that is a housing authority scenario. But we do know by way of being a county entity and being a part of Forward 2045, there is some expectation that our work reflects this economic mobility based on how we do business. So, for example, this is what I mean by the road meets the rubber. So I appreciate our new county manager giving me data around what our MWBE participation was like with contracts in 23-24. The North Carolina Center for the North Carolina Center for Historically Underutilized Business was able to help me to kind of really drill down in the data, because we don't necessarily do this, and I'm going to give this information back to our county manager so that it can be double verified. But essentially, 23-24, there was roughly about $290 million spent out through the county. Now, for Black-owned businesses, about $800,000 was awarded in contracts, which is about 0.27% of the dollars went to Black. For women, it was 1.14% of the 290,000, and then others was about 0.47%. And so if you add all of that up collectively, we're not really even at barely 3% of what we did. So you get my point. It is a major concern for this community to, be the expectation of city, county, school district to be not by we're doing our best and good faith. No, we need to have some very forward planning, as 2045 is highlighting, that we do something intentional about making sure that we award contracts, especially proportionate to our constituent representation.
Yeah, and I will just say, that gets into the specificity of, city and county policies going forward after this, sort of the rubber meets the road and really get into the details. And the work begins after this plan is adopted, when we start looking at implementation. But there is under goal 4 in the strong economic opportunity section, there is a strategy listed on there that says support small businesses and startups, particularly those owned by underrepresented groups. Mm-hmm. So we call that out. And there's that one, and then we also call about, regarding like public art, to really start fostering local fabricators and an economy around public art and fabricating, so folks don't have to go out to get those sort of jobs and projects filled. So we speak to it sort of at a broad level, but really what you're speaking about, that's the next stage, is when we start getting into actually implementing sort of these broad-based goals and strategies, is something like that, to really create policy.
So will you be involving the community in trying to come up with these specific strategies? Because I think that, especially as it relates to connecting to the small business owners, that it's going to be vitally important that they are part of the conversation to come up with strategies to make sure that they are empowered to be a part of our process to award contracts.
Yeah, in terms of what the planning department handles, we would have everything, probably would be a public, participation process involved within any sort of code changes, any sort of area plan development or targeted plan development. Those would be done. In terms of city and county policies, I'm going to assume that would be a public process as well, to gather public input as to changes to any city and county policies that are outside the realm of planning specifically. But yes, there's multiple factions of public process after the adoption of this plan and trying to implement it.
So the last question I have, Chair Martin, it looked like Cal was wanting to, our other deputy county manager, it looked like he was trying to add some information. I know he comes from the Community and Economic Development Department. Maybe, I don't have my glasses on, so maybe it was.
I believe Kyle and I were both at one point going to mention something. Commissioner Woodbury, you're not wrong, but again, from a high level, again, keep in mind this is a 30,000-foot view of long range, broad spectrum goals. There is some more specificity in the implementation section of this towards the end of the overall 94-page document, but even it doesn't get into actual action steps and those kind of things. Keep in mind that this is a broad-ranging plan that is not just looking to direct our work program, but could be used for if the county decides to do a strategic plan sometime in the next year or so. Some of these items that come out of this plan could be used for that. I know that the city council is going to be undertaking a strategic plan in the spring of '25. Future capital plans, changes to policies that may live outside of the planning document in the planning world, such as purchasing policies and those kind of things. All those things would have their own process. This is looked at aiming a lens on, all right, this is an issue, this is something we need to work on, but there would actually be some of it may be our department, some of it would be other departments, but those are things, again, I think that the elected bodies could then utilize as a reason for, all right, this is why we're wanting to do this. This is what the plan says. We have seen, looking at historically over the last several years, that there hasn't been as robust participation from minority and women-owned businesses. How can we change our policies to address that? The plan in and of itself and planning staff wouldn't do that, but again, by shining a light on that as one of the things that would help with economic development, especially in disadvantaged communities, that's something that other folks could then take action on.
Very well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Other questions?
One brief question. Just want to make sure you indicated that the plan forward is online. So the draft that is being considered this afternoon at the planning board is now online. Okay, thanks.
Good. Thank you very much, and I really applaud your effort. I think the reorganization that you've done between this plan and 2030 is very positive, and I think getting the length down to 94 pages, I heard you say under 100, and I heard it's actually 94. We barely made it, but you made it, which is great, and I think that's a desirable feature for people who look at such things and to encourage more citizens to actually look at it and read it. So I think it's very helpful. So it's a lot of work. It's been going on a long time, and I think we will all look forward to spending more time with what you have done to look at it, and certainly appreciate that work. Thank you.
And I'll just clarify, it is online, but it's not on the city's website or the county website. It's on forward2045.com. That's where everything lives about the plan lives on there. So.
I was just trying to look at the website. So.
Yeah.
Thank you. Our last presentation, come on up, Courtney. It's Courtney Lawrence. You drew the short straw or something for today to be last, and we'll try to take our folks sort of out of it. We'll try to work on prioritizing better. I think you've been close to last before.
It was.
You call me Lawrence. You call me my maiden name. We go way back, right?
I apologize. We do. I apologize, Courtney. Sorry.
I haven't been called that in a while, but that's okay.
I apologize.
No worries. Thank you. Okay, well, so good morning. We are still in the morning. Commissioners, thank you for allowing me the time today to update you on utilities items. Am I showing? No.
It's actually for some reason still our plan, so let me
Okay.
hit stop sharing, and then now
It was up there,
share.
but-
Well, yeah, but
We didn't go
Now-
through the process. Thank you.
Now we should be.
There you go.
There it goes. Yes, thank you. Okay, now we're ready. So just a couple of items that I want to update you on, a few projects where the Utilities Department is partnering with Forsyth County. There's a policy update for the lift station piece that we've been talking about, and then I wanted to get into a couple of regulatory updates. So Tanglewood Business Park Sewer Extension, this project is estimated to cost $2.7 million. The utilities contribution is estimated around $250,000 per our oversized main policy. We have selected an engineer, Stantec, to perform the design services for us. It was approved at the Utility Commission meeting in May. And right now, the engineer is working on data collection and surveying. It should be, the schedule shows that it'll be advertised for bids sometime next spring, with construction starting in the summertime. And this is just a map showing that project. It is extending sewer out of the new lift station that serves the Tanglewood Business Park. Highway 65 waterline extension. So again, Utilities is partnering with Forsyth County on this project to extend approximately 2.5 miles of 8-inch waterline along Highway 65 from Rural Hall to Dermington. And we are administering the project, and the waterline will be conveyed to the City of Winston-Salem for ownership and maintenance once complete. The City of Winston-Salem received $3.1 million to fund this project through the American Rescue Plan Act, and the engineer that was selected for this project was Hazen and Sawyer. The project was bid on July 30th, and Jimmy R. Lynch and Sons was the low bid at just a little over $2.6 million. The Utility Commission approved that at their meeting this past Monday. It is contingent on Department of Environmental Quality's approval. Because there are ARPA funds, it's got to go through an approval process. Just some paperwork that needs to happen. The item was contingent on the interlocal agreement between the Utility Commission and Forsyth County, which I think is on your agenda to be reviewed today. So that everything's moving along with that as well. The estimated project cost is $3.1 million. This includes engineering services, easement acquisitions, and construction costs. We are still finalizing some easement acquisitions, so that cost could change, slightly as we settle all those. Estimated completion of the project is summer of 2025. And just a map.
Promise.
What's that?
You promise.
I'm doing everything in my power to get this project done. But all positive steps at this point, so it's good. So the Southeast Forsyth County Sewer Expansion Project, the county received $20 million through the state budget to expand water and or wastewater service in southeastern Forsyth County. So our staff, utility staff, has been working with the county to identify a place to use those funds. And we have identified the site off Wahlberg Road that was mentioned earlier in the last presentation to build a new sanitary sewer lift station. A request for qualification was advertised for owner advisor services, and we have selected a consultant. We're meeting tomorrow to go through scoping services, to talk through scope and price. And then we are going to use design build project delivery on this project. So that's where the owner advisor comes into play to help us draft an RFP, select a design build team, make sure that we have all the legal requirements in place for that. And then you've seen this before, this map before, so just kind of the area that it serves. So we have been discussing a policy regarding private water and sewer systems. Just to give you a little bit of a history, which most of you know, there's been an increase in development outside of our service area due to the lack of available land with sewer available. Several of these developments are requiring sanitary sewer lift stations to bump that wastewater back into our system. In the past, Winston-Salem Forsyth County Utilities has not accepted new lift stations, new sanitary sewer lift stations for ownership and maintenance. Therefore, the developers were building private systems, which resulted in increased increased complaints from homeowners because the cost of the service is so high. So the county charged us, the utilities department, to look at options to try to find a solution to this. We have researched what our peers are doing, and we developed some policy revisions that are outlined right here. So basically, only a water sewer system built to the city standards and conveyed to the city for ownership and maintenance may connect to our system to be accepted, except for you can still have a private water system to serve a single, or private water sewer system to serve a single property owner, such as a hotel or a business that might need a pump station to serve that one development. Those revisions were approved at the Utility Commission meeting in August, and I will say that I've discussed this item at the quarterly developer forum. I sent the policy revisions out to the group for feedback. I sent the revisions directly to some developers that I know had projects underway, and took their feedback and made revisions to the language and to come up with what actually got approved by the Utility Commission. So it was a very, very collaborative process, and I think we have a good solution moving forward. And then my last three slides, I guess, are on a regulatory update. So everything we do in our world is heavily regulated, but I am going to just touch on two regulations that are really publicized, and I know a lot of media attention. One is around PFAS compounds. A lot of times you hear it in the media as forever chemicals. But in April of 2024, so earlier this year, the EPA announced new maximum contaminant levels. Again, PFAS and these compounds are found in a lot of different substances in our products in the society. So they're found in firefighting foam. They're found on stain-resistant carpets and upholstery, and so the EPA has set new limits. The good news is that our source water that we used for our drinking water, we are below those levels. So we do not see any issue or anticipate any issue meeting those levels as they've been set by the EPA. So
Can you remind me again what a PFAS is, compound?
You can ask me the really technical stuff. It's perfluorinated something. Is a long term for it, but they're basically compounds that are found in Teflon, stain resistant coatings on carpet and furniture, and they're found in firefighting foam. So they're used in the manufacturing process of a lot of different products.
Gotcha.
And then the other regulation that's kind of out there is the lead and copper rule revisions and improvements. So the lead and copper rule was became law in 1991. There's been a few minor revisions since then, with a major revision in 2021, and then there's another revision currently going through the rule review process right now, called the lead and copper rule improvements, which we anticipate to be finalized in October of this year. But basically, this revises the regulatory timeline for service line replacement of lead service lines and new sampling requirements for water utilities. The lead service line inventory is due by October of this year. I'm not going to go into detail about this entire schedule, but basically, again, I mentioned that the lead and copper rule revisions became law in 2021, and there's still some revisions that to the improvements piece of the rule that are anticipated to be finished by 2024 of this year. But each utility is required to develop a public-facing document that inventories all of our service lines, of all of our private service lines. We're working with the state on that inventory, and they've allowed us to use a predictive model. And so what we have done is we have completed 400 vacuum excavations on homes. So that's physically going out in the field, doing a test hole to figure out what the material is that's serving that property, that home. And then we use that sample set to predict what, the other homes, the service lines that are built in the same era or in the same vicinity. But we have a new campaign called Help Get the Lead Out. So we're asking our customers to help us by self-identifying the service lines that they have. There's a link on our website where it gives you fairly simple instructions and pictures, and you can just upload everything, use your phone, upload pictures, and report back what kind of service line that you have. That just helps our model, it just refines it more. And we've received over 1,300 customer responses to date where our customers have self-reported. But after the lead and copper rule improvements, a lot of words there, get finalized in October, the utilities will have a better idea of what requirements we have to do on the private property for lead service lines. And that's all I have for you today, if you have any questions for me.
Mrs. Driver, thank you. My apologies. Any other questions for Courtney?
Hopefully a couple of quick questions. The southeastern sewage service area, remind me again, where will the actual treatment plant be that this is going to? Where
For
is
the Wahlberg Road piece, is that what you're talking about?
the southeastern Forsyth County sewer service area?
Yeah, so that lift station will pump back into a gravity line that will be treated at our Muddy Creek wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, thank you. And the regulatory update, the new MCLs for PFAS, PFOA, and PFOS, subsets, I understand, of PFAS.
Yeah.
The good news is that our source water meets those standards now. Do I understand correctly that the bad news at the state regulatory level is that the Environmental Management Commission declined to adopt the Department of Environmental Quality's recommendation that these MCLs be referenced in our state standards so that they were enforceable when it came to new discharge permits?
So are you referencing a recent article that was in the
I'm referencing
journal?
that whole process. I've been tracking it.
Yeah, so I think what you might be talking about, there has been a petition by some environmental groups they petitioned the EPA. Is that what you're saying, to revoke
That's the most recent development. So I'm referring to the underlying reason. The Department of Environmental Quality staff prepared a recommendation that these new standards be referenced in the state standards so that their permitting staff could include any appropriate provisions in permit amendments or new permit requests. The Environmental Management Commission declined to adopt that recommendation. So we're kind of hanging out there right now at a window of vulnerability that new permits or amended permits could fail to include standards for the discharges sufficient to protect our water supply from changes in effluent going into it.
Right, and I think that was why there is a petition for the EPA to kind of step in and get involved. So now it's at the EPA's level to step in and work that out with the state. Obviously, the EPA has delegated authority to the states to issue those permits and those just discharge permits. So,
as I understand it, they've actually petitioned to have the state decertified as the delegate for applying the Clean Water Act, which would have sort of enormous repercussions.
Correct. So that has been a petition. We don't anticipate that will happen. I think the EPA will get involved and work with the state to resolve whatever issue that the one that filed the petition, the environmental groups filed to resolve those.
Imagine that the EMC is going to have to change its decision and follow its professional staff recommendation for what needs to go in. Well, thank you. I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that we were talking about the same thing.
Yes, and very much aware of what you're talking about and what's going on, keeping. staying on
Any other
top of it.
questions? Thank you very much for coming,
Thank you.
Courtney. It's good. We've been at it for 2 hours and 10 minutes, and I was just thinking, our real estate update, I suspect, I'm seeing that the audience has gotten that presentation, and Kirby was probably the one. But in any case, could we wait and do this at the beginning of the briefing session? I think that would
Absolutely.
be-
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Might listen a little bit better. Okay. All righty. So let's adjourn until 2. Thank you.